When Gary first started his new job, he was the first one at work. He arrived early, he stayed late. He helped train other employees. He told people what a great place King's was to work. They had an amazing retirement package. Often management would surprise the employees with bonuses for no reason at all. You could also take a test and get a promotion. It was difficult work, but it was exciting nonetheless. As time went on, Gary, like many other employees, felt unappreciated by his coworkers. He felt like management didn't always address his concerns right away. What kept Gary even partly interested in his work was that retirement package. The only thing was, the longer you were with the company and as you began to approach that time for retirement with King's, you got moved over to third shift. It got harder to train the incoming employees. The hours felt longer. Gary no longer felt compelled to brag about working at King's. In fact, he started playing hooky from work. And now when he got promotions on third shift, he often told management that he would rather someone else get the position. As Gary got closer and closer to his last day with King's, although the retirement package was in view, Gary continued with his poor work performance and bad habits. On the day that was to be his last, his alarm went off and he hit the snooze button. Time and again it went off, and Gary thought to himself, just a few more minutes, I've got time. Before long, Gary woke up to a phone call telling him that he had missed the entire shift. There was an accident at work that had caused a fire, and dozens of young employees had died. Needless to say, management notified Gary that he was terminated. Gary said, but what about all the years that I came early and stayed late? What about all the sacrifices that I made early on in my younger years with the company? The manager simply said, Gary, you and I both know you became someone that I did not recognize over the last few years. You started coasting. It's like I never knew you. Gary is representative of how we are when we first come to Christ. King's is, of course, working for the King in the kingdom. The zeal of coming early and leaving late is that zeal we have when we first come into the knowledge of Christ. The bonuses that I spoke of represent unmerited favor. The retirement package is heaven. But just like Gary, somewhere along the line, we start feeling unappreciated and get hurt by other Christians, by the church, and we begin to lose our excitement. The work of witnessing, of evangelism, and of service all becomes tiring. The move to third shift represents the fact that night cometh when no man can work. Gary playing hooky is him skipping Bible study and church services. Gary no longer bragging about the company is the way many of us refuse to share Jesus with the unsaved. Gary giving away his promotions are the ways that many folk in the church will drop their position like a hot potato. And even though heaven, the retirement package is in view, we revert back to bad habits and poor work performance. God calls our name and we feel the pull to get to work, but when the alarm sounds, we hit the snooze button. And all of those young employees that died are the unsaved people that were on your tree. The people that you were supposed to have a divine intersection with. Those that needed to hear your testimony, that would see Christ through your walk, through your life, but you were busy sleeping. You were in the final days and you started coasting. You started pacing yourself. You lost your urgency. And as a result, people lost their souls. And like Gary, there will come a day when you stand not before the management of kings, but before the king. And he says to you, you became someone that I didn't recognize. Depart from me. I never knew you. My title this morning is Snooze Button Salvation. Snooze Button Salvation. Our text is found at Romans chapter 13, verses 11 through 12. Romans chapter 13, verses 11 through 12. And for finality, Romans 13, verses 11 through 12. It reads like this. It says, and that knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep. For now is our salvation nearer than when we believed. The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light. God bless the reading of his word. There's an old adage, I don't know if you've ever heard it, that says if you snooze, you lose. Which means that if you are not vigilant about your work or an opportunity that is before you, someone else may not only seize it, but the unknown benefits that accompany it. Yet another double entendre is the idea that often we are found to be asleep as opposed to getting started with our day. We are reluctant by nature to get up, seeking instead to garner another few minutes of sleep. Or as some of us say, yet still checking our eyelids for cracks. One of the most dangerous games that you can play in life is called let me rest my eyes for a second. People have rested their eyes, Mr. Warren, and woke up bewildered because that second had turned into hours, and they found that they had missed a crucial appointment, or they experienced the anxiety of realizing that they were late to work, late to school, or thought it was another day entirely. Many of us are in a catatonic state regarding our salvation. We don't know what time of day it is relative to our Christian walk. We are confused because on the one hand, we say that we are children of light, but we are constantly performing the works and deeds of darkness. Church folk will come and get a good word on Sunday morning, as the folks say, but they'll dress you down on Sunday evening. We see death occurring all around us, and we say that we are going to do better by our friends and our loved ones, but only days later we find ourselves not speaking again, holding grudges and bringing up trespasses of days gone by. We say, life is short, but we make plans for tomorrow before today has even drawn to a close. We are walking around in a spiritual stupor. We are half asleep, half awake, half alive, but yet half dead. See, the spirit within you represents life, but that flesh is a dead thing. We are spiritually drowsy. We are nodding off, and God's warnings are the alarm sounding. He's sounding the alarm with every sermon, with every confirmation that you receive, with every Bible study. But many of us continue to hit the snooze button. The snooze button is the equivalent of God calling you and you having his number programmed to do not disturb. You hit snooze because you don't want to wake up and come to the realization that there is a day of work that lies before you. A work that you're not quite ready to start. Let me give you the first point this morning. You know that it's time to get up. You know it. You know that it's time to get up. I want to deal with the text. The text says, and that knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep. Paul is writing from Corinth. His letter is to the Jewish Christian believers at the church in Rome, and it is the winter between 57 and 58 AD. The word time here is properly rendered as season. So Paul is saying, you know the seasons. You have seen people of the faith persecuted violently and put to death quickly. And if it's between 57 and 58 AD, that means that Jesus has not long left us. Paul is writing in hopes that they will awaken to their duties and be urgent, as I spoke with you about this week, in the faith. See, Paul believes that the second coming, the parousia, is sooner than many think. Paul does what we are supposed to do. Paul ministers and preaches and evangelizes with zeal in preparation of Christ's return. He warns believers that are lukewarm to be sober, to be vigilant in their walk with Christ. But why does Paul use this metaphor of sleeping? The idea of sleep is also synonymous in the Judaistic faith with being dead. If we are not alive in Christ, then we are spiritually dead. To be asleep as it is in death is to be apart from Christ. It is to be in Sheol, awaiting both death and judgment. So in essence, what Paul is saying, and what I am pointing out to you, is that people that are sleepwalking through life, knowing that there is work yet to do, knowing that it's time for them to get up, they are playing that dangerous game that I mentioned. But let me rest my eyes for a second. And they're resting their eyes. They're refusing not only to get up and get to work, but they are refusing to see the truth because they are in an altered state of consciousness. And apart from Christ, they are simply walking around waiting for hell and judgment. You say, but Pastor, I'm saved. Well, let me say this. There are many mornings when my alarm doesn't wake me up. I'm awake looking at my alarm, waiting for it to go off. I'm awake, but I'm not up. I can be up, but not working. The same way people will call you around 6 a.m. and you answer your phone, but you say, I'm not up yet. So you can be awake, but not aware. Meaning that you can know Jesus, but not be moving in Christ. You can see the alarm about to sound and yet hit snooze. Paul says you know the seasons. And you know it's time to wake up because our salvation is nearer than we believed. Every day that you live, I want you to hear this, beloved. Every day that you live, that God grants you to live, is one less day that you have to live. You see, you keep taking tomorrow for granted. You keep counting tomorrow before it even arrives. You don't value tomorrow until you get an ache where you never had one. You don't value tomorrow until the words on objects start getting a little smaller. You don't value tomorrow until your daily routine requires more pills than vitamins. You don't value tomorrow until people have to repeat things to you at a higher volume. You don't value tomorrow until they start rolling your classmates away. You don't value tomorrow until you're doing more moaning than you are talking. You don't value tomorrow until you got more doctors and specialists in your life than you have friends left. You better wake up and get urgent about your life and stop hitting snooze. See, we always sing about the upper room, but I want you to know that a lot of us are gingerly making our way up the steps. The second thing I want to show you this morning, a lot of us stayed out too late. A lot of us stayed out too late. What do you mean, Pastor? The text says the night is far spent. The day is at hand. What does Paul mean? Well, let me ask you a question. Did you have fun? What do you mean, Pastor? Did you have fun? To say that the night is far spent means that the time for being a heathen is over. It's time to come on in. In the spirit, the street light just came on. The time for error has expired. The margin for mistakes is growing thinner by the moment. As my mama used to tell me, son, you can't afford to play off base right now. Will a man rob God? Yes, not only in giving, but the giving of his time. There are many of us that have partied and sinned and did everything that we were big and bad enough to do. But I came to tell you this morning that the coming of the Lord is drawing nigh. And Granny used to say, don't let the Lord crack the sky and catch you in your mess, son. See, a lot of us have spent more of our lives unsaved and playing off base than we have in true service for the Lord. And now when God calls your name, you tell him, I'm tired. But you didn't get tired serving. You got tired and exhausted with the wiles of the world. But now Paul says, beloved, that time is spent. It's time to get your ray in somewhere and sit down, as Granny would say. There are still some old men out here womanizing. You better get somewhere and sit down. There are some old drunks and drug addicts. You better sit down. When all of your strength is gone, when all of your energy has been zapped, when you can barely move and the prognosis for the end of your life is starting to come into view, then you want to call on the Lord when you can no longer serve him. You want to give him your leftovers. You've been hitting snooze for work. But watch this. Isn't it amazing that nobody had to call and wake us up when it was time to go to the club? Nobody had to interrupt my nap when I was out creeping and I was going places that I had no business. We didn't have to set an alarm for sin. We had an exuberance and an energy that was necessary for foolishness. We hung out all night Saturday. Then we had energy to go get something to eat. And then on Sunday morning, when folk were headed to church, we were headed to bed. Oh yeah, we did what God said as the unsaved. We rested on the Sabbath. We got that part right. But then we got up and we worked what they call that man's job on Monday. We found a way to make it there on Tuesday. We celebrated Hump Day on Wednesday. And then came Thursday. That was our pre-Friday. Because we knew we would find some energy on Friday. And then we gave that man 40 hours. And then what happened was we gave the world all of Friday and Saturday night. But God couldn't get 2 hours on Sunday. Paul says the night is far spent, beloved. When you're on your deathbed and the highlights of your life begin to play, Where will you see the balance of your nights have been spent? We hit the snooze button on our salvation because, hear me, we wanted to keep sleeping with the world. That's why it talks about the righteous shall scarcely make it in, because many of us will make it in solely because of belief, not because we have any works to show. We'll make it in based on a belief that is in fact genuine, but it's a belief that is based out of fear, because the night cometh and we're scared of the dark. A belief that is accompanied by the burden of sickness and affliction. I came to tell you this morning, you shouldn't have to get sick to get saved. Snooze button salvation. Point 3, let me give you this and get you out of here. I know I'm talking tough to you this morning. Point 3 is get up and get dressed. Get up and get dressed. The apostle says this near the end of the passage. He says, let us therefore cast off the works of darkness and let us put on the armor of light. Beloved, it's past time to get up and get dressed. I need you to spiritually stretch and brush your teeth, because I need you in somebody's face testifying about the goodness of God. Lay aside every weight that so easily besets you. It's time to get to work. It's time to develop an unparalleled sense of urgency. I know your bed is comfortable, but when seduction is laying beside you and sin is crouching at the door, you can't afford to be comfortable in your bed. You've got to get up before you miss the most important day of your job, which is today. The most important day on your job for Jesus is always today, because tomorrow never comes. Today, someone that's sick needs to hear from you that God is a healer. Today, someone that is bound needs to hear you say, he set me free. And if he did it for me, he can do it for you. Today, someone needs to hear that when they're stuck in a storm, you know someone who the winds and the sea obey. Not tomorrow, today, because tomorrow never comes. It's time to give God what he is due today. It's time to be who he called you to be today. It's time to shroud yourself in a raiment of righteousness. Paul says to put off the works of darkness. In other words, beloved, what you're wearing right now, you can't wear that to work. It's not appropriate. Get up and put on your work clothes. Girt your loins with truth. Put on the breastplate of righteousness. Shroud your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Grab hold to the shield of faith. Put on the helmet of salvation. And don't forget that sword, which is the word of God. Tell sin, I want you to roll over and tell sin, you've got to go. You don't even look the same. What was I thinking? I must have been drunk with the ways of the world. I had on beer goggles at the time. I had a wonderful evening. It was fun while it lasted, but it's about to be daybreak. You got to get out of here, for the bridegroom cometh. I can't get caught with you. What if my father comes home and catches me with you? Plus, I'm late. Sister Albertina says it like this. She says, I'm going to work for Jesus until my day is done. I'm going to work until the setting of the sun. I'll see no sorrow. There'll be no tomorrow. I'm going to work until my day is done. So, beloved, get up and get dressed. There's no time for sleeping. I don't know about you, But I can't hit the snooze button when I know that 615,000 Americans just died of COVID. I can't hit the snooze button when I know that 230,000 people that look like me are missing. I can't hit the snooze button when I know that over 500,000 people don't have shelter. I can't hit the snooze button when I know that 47 million people are poor and they're struggling to make ends meet. I can't hit the snooze button when I know that the only meal some children will get is at their school. I can't hit the snooze button when I know that halfway through this year we've already had 267 mass shootings. I can't hit the snooze button when every time I turn on the news, there's a mother pleading for justice for her murdered child. I can't hit the snooze button when I know that Satan goes about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour, that he desires to sift you as wheat, that day and night, while we are yet sleeping in our beds, covered up to our necks with the comforter, that he is before the throne of the Holy One, making accusations against you and I. No, I've got to get up. I've got to get dressed. I've got to be vigilant. I've got to be sober-minded. I've got to work while it's still yet day. I've got to get to work. So stop nodding off. Stop resting your eyes. Stop checking your eyelids for cracks. Start the day early in the morning with a prayer of thankfulness and a cup of black King James coffee. Add a little Jesus, for he's sweet, I know. Be so wide awake that the alarm doesn't wake you up, but you're already up waiting for the alarm to go off. God bless you this morning.